Hello, everyone. It's Dylan.
And Kennedy. And we're here with our special guest,
Miss Rzab.
Yay! Our first interview. I think this is a really good way to start it. So, for those of you who don't know, actually, do you want to explain what you do in your role?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Miss Rzab. I'm one of the academic counselors here. So I work with freshmen, sophomore, juniors with the last name starting with A through K.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm also one of the school social workers. So we'll talk about it a little bit throughout the podcast. But my job before this, I was a licensed therapist. So I kind of double as that here at Marian as well. So although I work with a specific population at the school, I really kind of see everyone throughout. And then I'm also one of the cheer coaches too.
That's so cool.
That job sounds really fun and really cool. So what inspired you to become a counselor and what inspired you to come to Marian?
Yeah, so becoming a counselor, my job is actually slightly a career change. So, like I said before, I was a licensed therapist. So, I did, before I came to Marian, work in a behavioral health clinic as a family therapist. I worked with children anywhere between 4 years old and 18 years old who really struggled significantly with OCD, anxiety, depression, different mental illnesses like that. And it debilitated them so much that they weren't able to attend school. So they were coming to see me instead of going to school. So basically, in that job, I did a lot of collaboration with schools, and I just noticed that there's a lot of need for discussion about mental health in the school setting. So then I went back to school so that I could come here and work at Marian as a school counselor. And I chose to come to Marian because my brothers both went here. My dad went to school here. They coached wrestling here. So I've been around Marian Catholic for a long time. So it was a really good fit for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people come back to Marian for a reason. I feel like that's a very community involved thing. Either alumni or family members, like you said. I think that's a really special thing about Marian. We have a lot of connections. We have a lot of ties. I think especially different programs, like the band program, athletics. We all, like you said, wrestling. We all different involvement in it.
Okay, so seeing that, how do you collaborate with the teachers and students and parents to address and bring attention to mental health in the community, the Marian community?
Yeah, I honestly feel like a big part of my day is collaborating with the teachers. So asking them questions about different students that come into my office, or I'll have students come into my office because teachers have reached out to me about different concerns. So honestly, I think if it wasn't for the teachers, I wouldn't be able to do my job. So they really, really help me out a lot. I feel like the teachers see you guys more than I do. They work with you guys more than I do. So they kind of know what to expect when you come in. So like Dylan and Kennedy, when you come into school, all of your teachers kind of know how you're going to act and what your affect and everything is like. So if they notice one day that something is off, they're likely able to notice that more than I am. So we collaborate a lot in that sense. Same thing with parents. Like parents see you guys at home. So if I see that something's going on at school, I often call home to parents to make sure everything's going on at home. So if it wasn't for teachers, parents, other staff members, and students, I wouldn't be able to do my job here.
Yeah, like you said about teachers really paying attention to students. This is very slight and minuscule, but my AP Lane teacher, we were talking about parent teacher conferences, and he was kind of I can tell your parents every single thing that I've seen you do in this classroom essentially, and how you act as a student, how you collaborate with me, other students, and I think that's really important because we all act a different way. We're not going to act the same way I'm not going to act the same way in front of Kennedy that I do my AP Lane teacher. You know what I mean? So I feel being able to see multiple aspects is a really important part of your job.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do think the teacher and student bond with the students is really important because it shows that they're making the effort to show a connection and they're not just worried about your education, but your mental health as itself.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that so many students do come to you and trust you, what's the most common issue that students come to you for or they trust you with?
Yeah, honestly, there's a pretty big variety of reasons as to why students might come down to my office. So ranging anywhere from schedule changes or issues with grades, concerns with attendance or tardies, things like that. And then I also get a lot of social emotional concerns too. And then I even enjoy when students do come down and just say hi, ask me how my day's doing, tell me how their day is. A lot of kids come down and just tell me what they did over the weekend. And that's just a nice kind of decompressor for me, because then I just get to kind of have a casual conversation.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that. That's a really good part of my job. But one thing I really do enjoy is the ability to use some of my skills that I learned when I was going to school to become a therapist. So I was really worried changing my careers a little bit and coming into the school setting, because I loved being a therapist. I love helping people. I loved that part of my job. And I was worried I wasn't going to be able to do that as much coming into Marian. So I really like being able to provide those coping skills for kids, doing those coping skills with them in the moment when they're feeling anxious or if they're feeling overwhelmed. So I get a lot of that, and that's probably one of my favorite parts of the job.
So you kind of talked about like how students come to you for grades, or like how like you will call them down for grades, and they're like social and emotional learning. How do like grades and SEL kind of like combine? Like how do you see like struggles in both?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when kids are going through really hard times, it's hard for them to be motivated to come to school. And then that affects them obviously getting their work done. Like if you're missing a lot of school because you're lacking that motivation, it's going to be hard to catch up with your grades. Or if kids, like a lot of seniors right now are working on college applications, and it's really overwhelming for them. And it's hard for them to focus on these college applications because of that feeling of anxiety while also getting their schoolwork done. So really your mental health impacts so much, and a lot of it comes from those lower grades. So that's why part of my job is to check in with people who are whose grades are dropping a little bit, because we want to know, is something going on at home? Is something going on with your mental health? And what can we do to help you? Not because we want you to get straight A's, but because we're worried about what's going on in your life. And a lot of times we see that with your grades.
Do you think your past job, like working with kids who did struggle to go to school, has helped you here, or like in like a school setting?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main things I did at my last job was deal with kids who were so anxious to go to school. And the biggest thing that we worked on was not avoiding it, right? If you avoid it for so long, if you avoid things that make you worried or make you anxious, it's just going to be harder to do it when it comes time to actually doing it. So I think I use that a lot when I work with kids here, is like, I get it, it's hard, but you can't avoid it because you're going to have to do it eventually, and it's going to get harder.
I feel like that works with the work-life balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Like, because we're trying to balance doing all of our activities, and I know seniors with their applications and juniors with the SAT test coming up, balancing all that stuff with your mental health, it's really hard, but you have to accept it, and you just have to work through it, because that's going to be a part of life, and you're going to have to do that in your future too.
As someone who's like friends with like a lot of upperclassmen, I feel like, first of all, I'm scared to lose them next year, but I feel like I'm seeing like so many different aspects. Like I'm seeing, oh, like they procrastinate on their college apps. You know, I know not to do that. You know, I feel like there's like so many benefits to like experiencing that with like someone who's older than you. You know their mistakes, but you also know what you want to do well. And I feel like, especially in band, like there's so much that like you can see from like a junior perspective. It's like, oh, I want to do that next year. I want to do that differently next year. Or even just personally, oh, I didn't like this class last year, but I've learned, even though I don't like it, I have to try just as hard as I would in every other class.
And I feel like upperclassmen and people in the grades above you also set a big example, because I still talk to the seniors from my freshman year, and just watching them navigate through life and their struggles and trials and seeing them overcome it, it's really inspiring to me, as being so many years younger than them and always looking up to them. I know what to do and what not to do, and get more of a
Speaking of growing in futures, Miss Rzab, how do you believe, well, actually, no, how do you set up students for their future?
Well, on the technical side of things, as I'm sure you guys already know, we're constantly calling you guys down, making sure you're taking, like, you have to take 4 English classes, 4 theology classes, all of that, like all of those core classes that you need to graduate from Marian alone. Luckily, Marian is a college prep school, so we always tell you guys most of the classes that you have to take here are going to help you succeed in college, are going to be a lot of those required courses you need to get into college. So technically, we do all of that stuff, but then on a more personal level, I think it is really important for me and other counselors to share our personal stories, experiences, examples of what we went through to get where we are today, right? So because us as counselors already went through high school, the college application process, we went through college itself, we're navigating adult life. We had to find jobs and see where we belong. I think that's helpful for you guys to know because we all have our own unique experiences. And it's good to hear that things might not always go as planned. But I'm here today working at Marian at a job I love because I went through so many different things in my life, right? And I think it's good for you all to know that it's okay if plans change, right? It's okay if there are bumps in the road. Everything will eventually fall into place. And those challenges that we go through to get where we are really what shape us, right?
Yeah.
And I think that all falls back to just trusting in God and letting Him lead the way in your life and really just putting all your trust in Him. Because if we come up with our own plan, obviously, yeah, we have our life planned out. Like we want to marry this person, have this many kids, go to this college. But God's plan is going to override it either way.
Exactly.
Leading into that, who was a strong role model you had in your teenage years that really impacted you to be who you are today? And how did they impact you?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, everybody goes through their challenges, everybody goes through their struggles, and I think the one person that has always been my role model and still is to this day is my mom. Like she's always made sure to put everyone before herself. As a child, she did everything she could for me and my brothers. She really truly is one of the most loving, caring, and supportive people I know, and I'm so grateful for that. We, like I said, we all go through ups and downs in our lives, and she's always the first person that I want to call on my absolute best day, and she's the first person that I want to call when I'm having my absolute worst day. And I think that if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I don't know, I think she's just exactly who I want to be as a mother one day, and just in my future, she's just who I want to be like.
I really do feel like parents have a really big impact on who you are as a person. Whether they're there, whether they're not, it really impacts you. Like I have friends whose parents are absent in their life, whose grandparents took the mother and father role. I have friends whose parents are like very on them about everything and it impacts their mental health because they're trying so hard to reach their goals. But I just feel like my mom personally, she's always been there for me from day one. She's always supporting me through everything and she's never doubted me once. Like if I knew I could do something, she knew I could do it too. It's all about family and being there for you. I really feel that way.
Yeah, like you said, there's like a strong variety of, absences or like how involved a parent is. And I think a college essay really says a lot about someone. And I think I don't know, that's just like one of the first things that like I like ask older people, like, what do you write your college essay on? And I think like parents is like one of the number one responses, even though like it's not like straight up about them. It can either be like changing because of them in like in like a negative or a positive situation. But I think no matter what, it always like results in a positive outcome, and it really grows you as a person. You were kind of talking about your job a little bit and like how like your mom inspired you. Speaking of your job, like what is the most hardest part of your job, and what is the most rewarding, I guess?
I'll start with the hardest part. I definitely think it's just time management.
Yeah.
Like for example, today I came in this morning with a whole plan of what I was going to do today, and I didn't get to any of it just because there's so many different aspects of my job, and I get pulled in so many different directions that I can't always get to the things that I had planned to do. So really just being able to manage my time sometimes is one of the hardest parts of my job. And then I think one of the most rewarding parts, this is only my second year here, so I haven't seen you guys from like freshman year up till senior year, but it really is just seeing how much you guys grow and mature and all of the things that you're doing to succeed over the course of the years. So even just from last year to this year, I just see how much more you guys are growing and how mature you guys are getting, and it just really, that's by far my favorite part of the job, is just seeing how you guys are navigating through this high school journey, because high school can be really hard. It's a really, really hard experience, and it's hard to navigate through sometimes. So I think it makes you guys who you are, and it's great to see who you're all becoming. It's awesome to see where you guys end up when you go away to college. And I know in the future when I'm here longer and I see like where you guys are at in college and you guys come back and visit, it's just going to be so great to hear how well you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And you being here, it really does mean a lot because I feel like high school is a really big part of everybody's life. Like parents come back with memories, alumni always come back for their class reunion because high school is just such that big a part of your life. And it really does impact who you become as a person, also along with your parents and every other aspect of life, because you're finding yourself here. You're joining your clubs that you want to. You finding what you really like to do and what you enjoy doing. I really think that just shows the different things that you could become and what you could do.
As a student who's like considered like future career jobs or just future careers, like teaching, and like now I want to be like a psychologist. How do you get used to like a new group every year per se? Like it's a new dynamic every year.
Yeah, I definitely think that is difficult to get
Mm-hmm.
used to for sure. And not only just like you guys as students, you're getting used to like seniors that you were close to who are now off in college, so you
Yeah.
don't have them here. You have a new group of kids coming in. Same with us as staff members too. Like you guys are all going off to college, and then we have new groups coming in that we just have to kind of start over and build those relationships with. It's challenging and it's rewarding at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I hate to see you guys go, but I'm so excited for you guys. And it might be a lot of work to rebuild a bunch of relationships, but it's awesome to meet these new kids. It's
Yeah.
awesome to see where they're going, what they're going to be into. And then even like you've noticed here, we have a lot of new staff members here too. So every year I feel like we get some new staff members, some leave, and you have to then build those relationships too. But again, that's just a part of life. Like as you go through different parts of your life, people are gonna not be as close to you as you like go off to college and graduate college, but then new people are gonna come into your lives,
Yeah.
and it's just gonna be all of those different chapters.
Yeah.
And I feel like the end of the school year towards graduation and like seeing your sunset, all that stuff really makes you, it makes me personally more emotional, realizing that your seniors are going to graduate and you're going to go up another year. New people are going to come in. Like my freshman year, watching my seniors leave, I was really sad because I didn't know how the next school year was going to play out. But then watching my next seniors come my sophomore year, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And now being a junior, watching the people who were sophomores when I first came in, like setting the example for the school and realizing that's going to be me and my friends next year, that's scary because we're really growing up and it's coming sooner than we're all thinking.
Yeah, and it's more like bittersweet too. Like it's really sad to see people go, but then it's so exciting to see what's coming
Yeah.
next.
Right.
It's all about like opportunity and like seeing people grow. I think like growth is like a huge part of high school. Speaking of opportunity, I talked to one of my friends who actually edits our script, Joella, and I was just ranting, and she was kind of like, like you have to kind of look at life like an ocean. All waves, kind of like how I said, you're going to be pulled in different directions. But no matter what, if it's negative, positive, wherever you're supposed to be, you're supposed to end up on the shore. However it ends, it ends. You have to accept it. But at the same time, it was a journey. You were crashing through the waves. You were still at one point, there wasn't a storm. But I think that's like one thing like I relate a lot to, and like I always look at. It's gonna get somewhere. It's just not. This isn't gonna continue.
Yeah.
And I also just do think that's all part of God's plan. He's never going to let you fail because he has plans for us to prosper, plans for us to do good, whether it's a calm before the storm or it's the actual storm that you're in. You're going to get through it with God. And I do wholeheartedly believe that.
And obviously you're in water, and we didn't say anything about drowning.
Right.
You're going to always stay ashore. You're going to always be afloat. You're going to be fine. I think being able to like look at like an ocean and relate it to your situation, that's like very like peculiar, and like relating that something to like psychology. Speaking of psychology, is there like something that like amazes you about like the human mind, or just like something that like you specialize in, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's just so amazing to me how everybody can be so different and so unique, and there's so many different situations and life events and things that people go through that just shape who they are, right? So a lot of people say that if there's like mental illness that runs in your family, like you might end up getting that as well. But it isn't only just that. Like there's different experiences that you go through that can bring on some anxiety, that can bring on periods of depression and things like that. And one thing, and I don't even know if I would use the word interesting, but one thing that was pretty, I guess, interesting when I was working as a family therapist. I worked during the time of COVID, and I worked and specialized with OCD. And the increase in cases of OCD that came on when COVID happened, I'm sure isn't that surprising because it was such a scary time. But the things that I saw that your mind is making you do because you're so anxious about getting COVID was just so amazing to me. Like, your mind is such a powerful part of your body that it makes you do different things and it makes you think certain ways regardless of it being true or not. So people were washing their hands for hours at a time because they were so afraid that if they didn't do that, they were going to get COVID or they were going to give COVID to their parents or whatever it is. And I think just going off of all that, psychology is such an interesting topic. And I think everybody should take a psychology class. Everybody should take a class in high school or in college just because it is so interesting to learn about how powerful your mind truly is.
When we talk about OCD, is there like multiple types and like different aspects of it, or is it just like, oh, you're just washing your hands, you know, you're very cleansly? Is there like different like aspects of it? Because I like heard that there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what a lot of my patients with OCD came in saying. Like, I tell kids at school that I have OCD, and they say like, oh, all you want to do is be clean. Like, why can't you just ignore that or things like that? So it honestly actually kind of upset people with OCD sometimes because there are so many different types. And you can see somebody walking through the hall that has OCD and you would have no idea because it's like there's people like going off of the religious side of things. There's people that think if they don't pray a certain amount of times every day and say the exact same thing word for word every day, someone in their family is going to die or something like that. So it could be really, really impairing to people because it takes a lot of time, right? If you have to do a certain amount of things certain times per day, it takes up a lot of time. And that's why, like I said, when I worked at my last job, kids couldn't even go to school sometimes because they were impacted so much by their OCD.
I feel like, does that cause paranoia in the actual patient or person? It does.
Yeah, there's been cases too where like if your OCD is so debilitating, then you start to become paranoid, or you're afraid that if you don't do something, or some people are like have OCD and paranoia hand in hand, where they think like, oh, someone's out to get me, so I have to go to work this exact same way every single day because otherwise this person or whatever might get me, things like that. So it definitely can cause paranoia.
You know, I don't know if there's like such thing as like not doing something because it impacts you. But when I was little, I said this prayer: "Lay me down, go to sleep."
Lay me down, go to sleep. My head to my soul to keep.
Yeah, it's something involving like dying and like the fear of like God being able to like take me whenever that scared me as a kid. So I would not say the prayer at night. Like that would terrify me as a child. And like obviously like, I grew out of it, but like could that have been like a little moment of like OCD when I was little?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So you mentioned like how like you like can see a child in school and like not know that they have OCD, but how do you approach supporting students' mental health in a school setting?
Really, it all starts with that first discussion about it. I think the hardest part for people is admitting that you need help and initially identifying what is wrong, identifying what it is you need, what kind of help you need. And sometimes you don't know, right? Like you might be struggling, or kids might come into my office and they're struggling and I ask, what do you need? And they don't know what they need. And that's why they're coming. Like, I need you to tell me what I need to do right now, or what I need to get better and to feel better. So for me, I would like to think my office is a safe space and that I am someone who people feel comfortable coming to. Being inviting and being supportive, no matter what the situation, really can go a long way. You never really know what someone's going through. So when people do come into my office, I like to always start out with, how are you today? What is that you need today? Questions that really allow them to feel like I am there, I am listening, and I really do care what you're going through. And I'm going to do whatever it is that I can do to help you. And if there's nothing that I can do to help, I'm going to work with you to find that help.
You know, what you just said, you never know what someone's going through. Like little sayings people overlook or just like look at as cringy. Like, it's okay to not be okay. But I don't think people really like understand, and like maybe it's just like personally like does not resonate with them. But I feel like those are like such like powerful things. Like I know when Kennedy and I do like announcements, like we might like end something like that because we want to end it impactfully. You know, so some people, oh my God, that's so cringy. But some people be like, that might like change their entire day, change an entire perspective.
And
go ahead.
You
go
go
ahead.
first.
I feel like it needs to end in a positive way too. And I feel like some people don't acknowledge that they are going through something because they don't want to be going through something. They don't necessarily want to deal with the fact that they are going through something. But you do need to realize that. You need to know yourself, know how you feel, and like we said, know when you need to take a break. And that's okay. And it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, it's like people are afraid to admit it, right? It makes people feel like they're not strong or they're weak or something's wrong with them. But like everybody at some point in their life is going to be going through hardship or hard times, right? And it's okay to admit that. But one thing I was going to say when you guys were talking about you guys on the announcements, I've had multiple staff members reach out to me saying how much they appreciate that and how much they like that, because in their classes, they even try to like incorporate how do you practice gratitude or different things that like make you feel good or self-care and things like that. And they think that those announcements are really helpful for people. So keep those up. Those are awesome.
Yeah. We've had staff members like come up to us like directly, either like
directly after we finished the announcement, saying that they appreciated us saying that, or just bringing up the point.
Like it resonated with them personally, or like with like them as like in like a teacher perspective, like their students.
Right.
I've even had friends come up to me saying that they did enjoy the announcement and that they would come to Mental Health Club just because they heard it. And I think that's really impactful. And that's good.
Yeah, kind of like how you said, like people like don't want to admit that like they're like not okay. I'm like a person who's like, I try to be like that. Like there's some days where like I'm really stressed out and I'm like, I should go down and talk to Miss Rzab about this, but I actually don't. It's not because I don't like trust you. It's just because like I don't feel like I'm at that point where like I'm so stressed out. Like I should need to talk to someone about this. I feel like it's like a big thing that like, especially like recently since like, you know, like we've connected and like we've started this podcast. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like I deal with that too. I've definitely had times where I've just been going, and I know I'm overwhelmed. And back to my parent, my mom knows when I'm overwhelmed to a point where I need to take a break. Like there's days where she'll tell me, you need to stay home, you can't do this, because she knows if I keep going, I'll have like a breakdown, because I do that like every once in a while when I'm to a certain point, because I don't know, I think it's my mental and I just can't take so much. But I don't want to acknowledge that because I know that I have stuff to do. I have stuff to get done. I have to keep going. I have people relying on me because I just feel like the need to get it done right then and there instead of taking a break for myself.
Right.
Yeah, I think when there's like an opportunity given to rant, you ran. Like there was a question in my theology on my theology test. It was like, what do you wish was different about your school or your community? And my first thing was I wish it was just like a what if scenario. I was like, what if I was not in band? Where would I be? I've known so many people that have either quit or I just wanted to join band and never do. And they're like, it's so freeing. And I've always wondered what that feeling is. And obviously like I'm not gonna attain that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's always that what if. And like I ranted there for like a minute, you know, I was like, what if I wasn't in band? I would feel so much less stressed out. And it's not because the band stresses me out. It's just I put so much pressure on myself in order to do so good in that activity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like in whatever activity you do try to be the best at it, because if you're putting so much time and effort to an activity, you don't want to just be there to suck.
Yeah.
So I feel the same way. I put so much time into the band program. I put so much time into myself and getting better as a player, as a musician, because I do want to pursue that career when I get older. And I do want it to be a part of my life forever, because music makes such an impact on me as a person, and I feel like it impacts people around you, because sounds can make you emotional, they can make you happy, they can bring light to a situation, they can make a situation sound dark and evil. Like music is just, it's just there for you. I feel like
you know that there's this one freshman flute. For those of you who do not know, I used to play flute, but I'm drum major now.
You still do play flute?
Well, yeah, I still play flute, but there's this one freshman, and she, you know, she came in and I was instructed to help her, and like she was like a beginner, and 5 months later, like she's good. Like I can tell that she's practicing, and like I can tell she is going to be good. She is driven to not sound like a beginner, and like genuinely, like she knows who she is if she's listening. But like her drive just like amazes me, because she's well aware that she is quote unquote behind her other freshmen, but she is driven to be ahead of them. And I think that's one thing that like really like inspires me to get better at what I do.
And I do think upperclassmen and whatever activity you're doing do encourage you to get better because you're looking up to them as being the best of what you're doing at the moment. So you don't want to be anything less than that because you know you're going to get compared. You know you're going to be going against somebody as good as them one day. So you're going to want to be the best. Like you're going to work towards that. And my freshman year, I had an upperclassman. My senior, she was my section leader. She encouraged me so much to get better at my instrument. Just seeing how good she was and hearing how everyone always praised her because she was so good. I knew I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be the senior a freshman looked up to so that they could get that motivation.
And I think that's the biggest thing with upperclassmen, right? You want them to be supportive. You want them to be encouraging. They might be better than the underclassmen and they might have more experience, but you don't want them to act like that. You don't want to act like you're the best. You don't want to act, like having a big ego.
You just act like you know what you're doing.
Right. You want them to know what they're doing, but support you and encourage you because after you leave, those are the people that are taking over the band program or the cheer program or football or whatever. And you want them to, leave it in good hands, you know?
Yeah. I know you brought up that you were in cheerleading earlier. Did you face any of these like similar problems? Like I know we're kind of yapping about bands.
Yeah, I think really any activity that you're in high school is a big time commitment. And that's how I was in high school. Like I did cheer all 4 years. I played soccer. I was in it's called Variety Show. It's kind of like a theater production where you do like dancing and singing, and it was a huge time commitment there too, but we all enjoyed it so much. Like I feel like you always complain, oh, I have cheer practice today, I don't want to go. I have theater practice, I have band practice, I really don't want to go. But then once you get there, you're like, okay, now I remember why I put so much time into this and why I do it, because it really is rewarding and it's fun. And I think that's how it was for me in high school. I mean, the amount of times I was at cheer practice and I was like, I'm going to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And then I look back and I'm like, thank God I didn't, because that was the biggest part of my high school.
Yeah, I think I'm a person freshman year where like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm quitting. Why am I here? But, it's just like little things that like give you a drive. Like, oh, there's cheer captain, there's section leader, blah, blah, blah. There's so many different opportunities that are presented to you that make you not want to quit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we as humans are naturally given that resilience to be able to put up with these challenges. And obviously there are some cases where someone may not have that resilience, but there's going to be someone who has to have that resilience.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to fight harder. They're going to have more drive. And again, that can be a lot more tiring on them. But like I said, there's a shore. You're going to end up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And another opportunity in high school I was given was to start this podcast.
Yeah.
And I remember we were in mental health club and I wasn't aware of it at all. And Dylan says, oh, we're starting a podcast. And I was like, we are?
Yeah.
And I was very like, I don't know how to feel about this. But then when he started elaborating on the idea and telling me about why he wanted to start it and why we should do it together, I was really understanding. And I really agree. And I do enjoy this podcast a lot. And I'm glad that you came up with the idea and included me.
Yeah, one of my biggest inspirations, I might have mentioned this, is Lexi Hidalgo. She has a podcast called The Moments Podcast. Mm-hmm. I didn't really get inspiration from Mindful Moments, but she focuses on such like little things. Like each episode has a reason. It's not just like ranting. I feel like that's like a lot of podcasts. Obviously, like we yabble a little bit, but we have like a considerable topic that we're like focusing on. So I just think our podcast having a mental health focus is very important. And it can be very selective to people. But at the same time, mental health is a very
broad.
Yeah. Anyone could want to, delve into it.
And everybody should be able to relate.
Speaking of this, how do you think personally that our mental health focused podcast will benefit people, specifically students?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that it'll show people, it'll show students that it is okay to talk about it. It is okay to talk about your mental health. It's okay to let someone know that you're struggling, and not even let somebody know that you're struggling. Like, it's okay to struggle. People struggle, and it's okay to admit that. I think it's going to normalize a lot of feelings and emotions that students have to go through while they're in high school. We talked earlier how high school is really hard. It's going to allow students to hear that what they are going through might be a little bit more common than what they thought, because they hear that other people are going through the same things. Like, they're stressed, they're anxious, they don't want to do their assignments today, they have to go to band and it's really stressful, or whatever it is. It's going to be helpful to normalize it and allow people to know that they're not alone. So like I said, high school, high school is hard and it can be hard to navigate. And I think this podcast can show that whatever it is that you are going through, you're not going through it alone.
Yeah.
Like us as a community, like Marian Catholic is such a good community, and everyone is really kind and supportive, and we're all here for each other. And I think it's good to allow people to know, like, hey, we are here for you. Like, you might not know me as a counselor, students might not know you, Dylan, or you, Kennedy, and after listening to this podcast, like, they might think, oh, I want to go talk to Dylan, like, I want to hear about band and this and that. And I think it's going to be really good for everybody.
Yeah, you know, like, my intent with this podcast, I think it's just like, obviously there's like, how many people in band? 135. We are two of these people who get to... Sorry, I just spit everywhere. Oh my gosh. Anyway, we're back. You know, like, we're not representing them necessarily. We're just speaking out for those who are scared to speak out. You know what I mean? And, you know, like, we are 2 high school juniors. There are how many other juniors?
Probably like 30, 40.
They're going through the same stuff as us. So I'm sure if they do listen to this, they have something to relate to. Right. They know that, like you said, it's okay to not be okay.
Right. Totally. And from an aspect as being a high school junior, I'm sure high school seniors, high school sophomores, freshmen doing this for the first time, seniors doing this for the last time, I'm sure you guys can all relate.
You know, one of my biggest regrets is not coming up with this freshman year, because I think, like, being able to see our growth freshman through senior year, I think that would have been, like, beautiful. Obviously, you know, like, we have to deal with what we're dealt with. And honestly, like, I would love to do a podcast in college, you know, but I just think, kind of like you said, like, watching students grow, I think growth is so, so, so beautiful. Like, I look at pictures of me from last year and I'm like, what was I doing? You know, like, I was brunette and now I'm blonde. Just, like, very, like, little minuscule things.
Yeah. And seeing all my friends grow from freshman year, they're not personalities, but maybe they're just demeanor change, their outlook on life, and just seeing them grow spiritually, seeing them grow physically is so beautiful. And I just love being there to support them every step of the way.
You know, I think just throughout this episode, this last however many minutes, like, I think we've learned a lot, hopefully a lot more about each other, and you guys have learned something about us. And that unfortunately does bring us to our close. I think this is very entertaining. I love hearing us talk. So anyway, coming back to the close, remember the Dropbox is actually now outside of Miss Rzab's office. Do we have any? Okay, yeah, we have none in there. It's empty. So please
go put the stuff in our Dropbox, because y'all, that Dropbox is super cute. I got it from like the dollar store, but it's still super cute. She put a cute construction box on it, and the note cards, y'all, she used them. Please,
there's been effort, so go do your part.
Speaking of that, there's only so much you can do. Remember, do the best that you can always. That brings us to our quote of the day. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. Whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Martin Luther King Jr.
And just in that quote, there's like a lot of growth and acceptance. I feel like we talked about like a lot of like about like acceptance today. So if you realize that you can't do something, don't just give up. You know, you might have to have like a stipulation, but
and stay motivated, because like we said before, there's always a calm before the storm. And even when you get into the storm, you're going to find your way back to the shore.
There's going to be a shore. Okay, is there anything that you want to say, Miss Rzab?
Right, since you're a special guest.
Yeah, I think this brings us to that shore that you guys have been talking about all podcast. And I think you guys are doing a fantastic job with this. The quotes that you guys are coming up with are really good. You're doing a really good job just talking through all of this stuff that we keep saying is difficult to talk about. So I give you guys props for that. And I just want to thank you guys for having me as the first guest on the podcast. And thank you for including me on this podcast as we go through it for the next couple months of school. So thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing all the other ones.
I think this was like a very appropriate first guest.
I
think
agree.
It was a good way to like open up.
Yes, and you did a great job. I really
thank you so much. We very appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Well, we'll see you guys on Monday announcements.
Yes. Okay. Rzab, do you want to do it with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Love you. Yes.